Kia ora, everyone, and welcome to our today's session at the Fundraising Nest Community Hub. We have the delightful and absolute gorgeous Ashley Rose joining us. Ashley is the CEO of Mondi. I always say it funny, Ashley.
You can say it as funny as you like.
I notice that I get away with saying things very badly because of my Scottish accent, but Mondial. Mondi?
Mondial.
Yeah, there you go.
You know.
So Ashley's with us in the studio today. Ashley, we go back a few years now, probably 5 years actually, has always been incredibly supportive of the sector in New Zealand and Australia, and has come on board as one of our Mavens, which you can read about Ashley on our Maven website. But over to Ashley. I'm going to just ask Ashley. Ashley, you tell our community who you are and what you do.
Well, you pretty much have just said it. But Ashley Rose, I'm the CEO of Mondial. I've been doing that for good and bad. I think we're coming up to 18 years.
Yep.
So 18 years, which is how long I've been in Australia and New Zealand, and yeah, look, way back in those early days, we were just a tiny little collection of desks above an Asian grocery store in Brisbane, and fast forward, we now have sort of 60 or so fundraisers working at home, in the office, pretty much in and around the Sydney area, yeah, that's about it. I'm a one-trick pony.
So we'll maybe kind of get into the some kind of targeted questions about tele-fundraising. But before we get there, like, what is it that you love about what you do?
Well, this is the moment where you sort of look up at the ceiling and hope for some sort of inspiration. But look, I studied a degree in hospitality. I started my working life as a 14-year-old waiter in the hotels in Brighton, in my hometown in the UK, and I was destined for a career in swanky hotels, and and I worked in quite a few. I worked in fine dining restaurants and hotels.
It's a nice place. I used to live in Bournemouth, just next door.
Big rivalry. And so all my years through uni, I worked at Claridge's and Anton Mosselman.
Wow, did you really?
Amazing, yeah,
amazing conversation. Claridge's?
Yeah. Back then, Claridge's was not. I mean, it was famous, but it wasn't as famous as it was now. There were lots
I
of
am such a sucker for hotels. I watch those, those TV shows where the behind the scenes in the hotels. I'm a bit of a sucker for those. Wow, you must have learned how to deliver amazing customer service.
Yeah, we used to. I mean, and I had an aunt that ran a recruitment agency that provided staff to these places. So whenever she needed someone to make a good impression, no pressure on me, she'd send me along, and she wouldn't just be my boss; she'd be my aunt giving me a slap if there were any negatives. So yeah, I served the Queen at a state dinner. Dressed as a courtier, had to get sized up for breeches and goodness knows what else. I did all of that, and I've pretty much reached a conclusion by the time I graduated that I didn't really care about the haves. Yeah. I had a lot more affinity with the have-nots, and I did a work placement in Tokyo where the wealth was off the scale. I worked in a restaurant in Ginza, which is, like, at the time, was the most expensive street in the world. You could buy anything in that street, from an island to a $200,000 kimono, it kind of sort of got to me a little bit, and I began to notice inequality, and I then met my now wife, then girlfriend, who was from South America, and my first trip to South America, I suddenly found this is the other side of the coin,
Finding
and
people.
and that sort of set me on a path of initially some volunteering work,
Mhm.
and then when reality struck and I needed a real job, I was lucky enough to find a fundraising agency in my hometown, right on my doorstep, who had literally the day I'd signed up, they'd signed probably the UK's first contract for face-to-face fundraising. So
Wow.
my very first day there, I was watching I came out of the lift as a bunch of Greenpeace clad fundraisers were going out onto the street for the very first time in
Wow.
in the UK. So it was a pretty exciting, time
Yeah.
to join the industry, and I guess I've been in it ever since.
That is an amazing story. Wow. That's awesome. Um, and I guess you've seen big changes. I guess during COVID, there was naturally things change rapidly. Can you say with confidence that during COVID, the increase in telefundraising was like it's never been before?
Oh, look, I think people don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. Sure, people were home. People were home, and we dialed them, and they answered. Which maybe one or two more times out of 10 they answered than they had
Yeah,
previously. I think there were a lot of people that really wished that it had filled in all the gaps. But I just think people diversified their portfolio. They found more people to call. Certainly by the end of lockdown, um, we were, we felt like we were on repeat dial with the same people being given back to us. So people hit their lapsed contact lists pretty hard,
yeah,
and for the most part it was as good a time as any to do it, because if
yeah.
someone's going to pick up, they would pick up when they're at home, and
Hmm.
probably were genuinely happy to speak to a stranger. So look, yeah, like for a lot of reasons, that whole lockdown and COVID period was good for the phone. Mostly, I would say from my perspective, it was good because all my staff were landlocked. No one came into the business and no one left, which gave us a real opportunity to train and get to know them,
Brilliant. Yeah.
and really fortunately that we always had good retention, but people really bonded through that period,
Yeah.
and that stayed. So that
And I
was the good
think
news story.
absolutely, and I know this is incredibly important to you because you are part of the FIA's Code Authority since 2019. But also during those times, we have a responsibility to, like you said, people who were lonely and just wanted to chat, and the vulnerabilities were there. So that was a great opportunity to, I guess, look at the ethics and put in some controls around vulnerabilities.
Yeah, look, certainly something that we told our clients pretty early on in the game was we were going to change all our introductions. So rather than being all sort of, hey, let's just get into a conversation, we started every conversation with, we want to check in and see how you're doing. First and foremost, you've been with us, supporting us for all of these years. Now's our opportunity to see how you are.
Yeah,
And we had some genuine responses to that, people who were going through hard times, and we just had a human to human chat. We left the fundraising, we left you know the normal spiel, if you like, to one side, and we just connected people as
yeah,
as humans. And then there were other people who sort of brushed it all off, and it was
yeah,
business as usual.
yeah.
They didn't want to be
Um,
asked. They just
Absolutely. But those moments, we know donors will never forget those moments. That where you did ask how they were. They're moments that define kind of, I guess,
for
relationships
sure.
even more. They won't forget that you asked them that question. Those that are kind of part of an organisation for a long time. So, great opportunity to do some proper relationships. So, community. For in your space where you're going, what are the top kind of three priorities as we kind of broach the next kind of 5 years do you see in your world?
Well, look, I mean, I think the thing that makes the phone work is that it's the human voice, much like face to face. It's a direct interaction with people. So the fundamentals for phone haven't changed. You get good, well
Hmm.
trained people in front of or on the phone with people who do care, or even if they don't care but are willing to listen to us,
Yeah.
then that's where the magic happens. Yeah, it's getting tougher to,
Hmm.
to, to make that contact. Mobile phones certainly haven't helped. They're not as good as landlines. We go cut to the anecdote of, I'm sure you recall as a child, if the phone rang, everyone sprinted to answer the phone. Now, when the phone rings, you just look at it and go,
Don't know who that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And you either know who they are and ignore them, or you don't know who they are and ignore them.
Ignore them. Yeah.
So I think there's a real opportunity there. I think there's a real opportunity for because ultimately, the mobile phone suppliers, whilst they do whatever they can to detract us from actually using our phones to talk,
Yeah.
nevertheless, that's what they're there for. And I think there's a real opportunity that we can find a route back to actually wanting to communicate and
I
get
think it's
out
so
of
important
SMS.
because my kids. I've got several. As you know, I've got several kids, and the amount of times I've been sitting and they're waiting to do something, and I'll be like, "So, are you ready to go? Am I dropping you off?" And they'll be like, "I'm just waiting for we're on the group chat," and I'm like, "Okay, go back."
Oh,
Like nobody's replied yet. I'm just waiting, and I'm like, "Why don't you just give them a quick call?" And it's like, "What?
yeah,
Do what?" I
yeah,
was like, "Call them." Oh, mum, nobody phones each other anymore. It's
yeah.
like,
100%. And what's kind of interesting is if you look back, I've noticed this. I'm not sure if you're a Star Trek fan, but key element of Star Trek, Star Wars, all that science fiction stuff is they always talk to each other. They don't disappear into a room and say, "I'm going to send an SMS to the away team." They tap their they just start talking.
yeah.
So I think it's ingrained with us, and I just think that we've the marketeers at mobile phone providers have done a good job of getting us. We're all addicted to the apps and we're addicted to the written word of social media, but I think at some point I feel like things will turn around and we'll go back to talking to each other because that's what
Yeah, because it brings
differentiates.
confidence. It brings, there's something about the art of the conversation that, like you say, when you're a kid, you ran to the phone,
Yeah.
that kind of mental barrier that I'm not talking to anyone on the phone is not going to help anyone to do anything that we need to do, in work and things. So, yeah, when you've figured out how to unlock that with young people, do let me know.
My son left his mobile phone on the bus the other day, and he had to spend a night without it. And you'd have thought someone had just cut his arm off. He did. How am I going to sleep? How am I going to wake up? How will I know what time it is? I'm just like, well,
Yeah, absolutely. What So we spoke about priorities and things. What and I know you've been a huge advocate of the sector. You sponsor, you support the institutes in both Australia and New Zealand, and supporting the awards at FIA is incredibly important to you. Um, Supporting fundraisers to be better is obviously incredibly important to you. And part of what we're doing here is joining a community. I think peer to peer, for me, peer to peer learning has been so critical. Whether it's just asking for advice or sharing a problem and then you resolve it just by talking to someone, or kind of looking to the peers for inspiration as well. So the community is bringing people together where they can find areas in the community hub. That identifies at least one commonality. If you're in that group, everyone else has that in common. Um, so I think, have you shared an example of anyone who I guess has been your inspiration as you've gone along from Claridge's to where you are now?
look, I'm forever amazed at certainly the people that I've had working with me on the phone. So we don't particularly have a hierarchical structure of me or any of the managers sitting at the top because we're humbled every day by the experience that the fundraisers make when they make that connection after 2, 3, 4 months, 6 months, however long, where they just get things and they can just make it look effortless and make it look so simple. That's the bit that really amazes me when I hear people pick up the phone within 2 minutes. They're actually like they're wading in with someone said, oh, I've just, they can say anything,
Yeah,
and people
that
don't falter,
inspires
they
you.
respond to it, and next thing we have quite a few fundraisers that are real characters, and instantly they hit it off with people
Yeah,
in seconds. It's not a
just
skill that I
magic to
possess.
watch. Got a couple more questions because I know you've got a busy day. I was quite quite surprised in my last role when I first started. A real cohort of potentially, people who've been in the sector a long time, and their absolute distaste for face-to-face fundraising and tele-fundraising. What would you say to people who just don't see these avenues as real fundraising?
Yeah, look, first thing, it swims both ways, because there are a lot of face-to-face and telephone fundraisers who'll be very quick to, demolish other methods of fundraising as, oh, that's not that. Look, I think at the end of the day, it's like anything. If you've got some degree of skill or expertise, then you're going to back it up, and
Mhm,
it's very easy to fear what you don't know.
mhm.
And yeah, of course, like anything, done well, it's brilliant. Done badly, you're going to get complaints. And I think, like if, yeah, I just think that people are just blinded by a degree of
Yes, and also,
of
this
ignorance.
isn't. It's not a standalone, isn't it? There's you can't just do tele fundraising, you can't just do face to face, you can't just do major. Like, it's
Yeah.
about the entire holistic journey of everything you have to offer. So nothing is going to be successful. You're only kind of, this is
And
how we do it.
look, the face to face, okay, it's more acquisition, but in the world of phone, where you're speaking to someone who's already, an existing donor, the phone acts as a pressure valve.
Yeah,
If you've been direct mailed with your name spelt wrong for
yeah,
25 years and never had the opportunity to tell
yeah.
someone, then all of those demons come out, and they can be, oh well, look, I can tap a few keys on my keyboard now and we'll update the database. So there are some genuine, like small
Mhm.
things which for that one person whose bugbear is, if their name's Christian and it's spelt with an H, but they don't have an H in it, yeah, that's
That's
really
it.
annoys
That's
them.
a really, yeah, I had never considered that before. That's actually something, yeah, that's a really good, next time someone challenges me, because I often would, I didn't know how to defend it. I'd be like, yeah, I know, I see the good in all parts of fundraising, but, that's something I've learned today. Okay, couple more before we wrap up. Who is Ashley when he's not in the fundraising world? Who is Ashley Rose?
Oh, well, you can usually find him in equal parts. Um, Probably more eating than cooking these days, but I would like to do more cooking. He's walking his dog, my beloved boxer, Lando, um, and he's drastic. He's hanging out with his kids, desperately trying to cling on to some kind of understanding that the world they live in is somehow relevant to me. So, you know,
Yeah.
um,
And
big.
that you're still a tiny bit cool.
Yeah, well, look, a little bit. Look, my 17-year-old son has started watching Sopranos, which
Yes.
is like, for me, is like, it's I've succeeded as a father as
Yes.
far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. So yeah, so I now have a Italian American son walking around the place with the
Those.
the, ha- the hand gestures and.
Brilliant. Okay, last question. What advice would you give to your younger self that you didn't know then, but you know now?
Oh, I think maybe listen more.
Yeah.
Listen, listen more. Tell yourself you don't know everything, and yeah, I think those are probably the main,
Okay.
probably the main things. And
Yeah.
yeah, just sometimes just sit back and enjoy the ride. Don't be driving forwards at quite such a pace. So yeah.
Yeah. Don't sweat the small stuff sometimes, eh?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Ashley, it was so lovely to have you today. I know you've made time in a really busy day, and you're putting out fires everywhere. So thank you so much for joining us. It won't be the last time we see of you. And thank you so much for joining us. And Ashley Rose, everyone.
Lovely.
See
Thanks,
ya.
Michelle. Bye.